So this is us, Workshop Media. We're a video marketing company. We're based in Lancaster. There's three of us, myself, David Forrest, and Amanda Jessen. So what I'm going to talk to you today, and it really picks up a little bit on kind of like what Mike touched on with the PMD stuff, is if you are a content producer, if you're a business, you want to build an audience, you want to try and deliver stuff in order to make money, ideally. Or if you're an individual wanting to make your way in the real world, content can actually work for you. And there are a lot of tools, free tools out there, that can actually help you. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is creating content for your audience. Now, this isn't necessarily the content that you're thinking of, the documentaries, the films, that kind of thing. This might be spin-offs from those. It might be kind of like behind the scenes vlogs, or it might be photographs that you take on set or in your experiences. I'm going to talk about how you get that content seen, how do you get that in front of people, and pretty much ensure that at least somebody sees it. Because it's all well and good sticking it up onto YouTube or kind of like launching a website, but it doesn't necessarily guarantee that you will get seen. And then I'm going to talk about measuring results. I'm actually going to show you how you can see that what you do actually is doing something. Hopefully that will mean results to your bank balance or kind of like your job of choice. But it'll also mean, is this content working? Does this content kind of like attract the right audience for me? Are people actually engaged, interested in this? So what I wanted to talk about first is, like, we've talked about audience a great deal, and I'm pretty sure you've talked about market. So in terms of what is your target market and that kind of thing. The reason why I use audience rather than market is because market is very much a cold, clinical way of thinking about it in terms of business. When you're thinking in terms of audience, I always think, when I'm thinking, who is the audience for what I've got? I think I am alone on stage in front of a cinema or a theatre full of people. And they're all looking, they're not judging me, they're not kind of like squinting their eyes and kind of like going, they just want to be entertained. They want to be engaged in some way, shape or form. And that's my job. And I've just got to kind of like work out a way of doing that. But the first thing to realize is this number of 5,000. It's a very special number because it used to be 500. But 5,000 is, in a 24-hour period, how many marketing messages the average person experiences. So what you've got to do is you've got to cut through the noise. And this is basically where things are starting to shift. Brace yourselves. How many of you know this guy? Yeah? How many of you have left the room to make a cup of tea when this guy is on? How many of you got a set-top box or some kind of like recording device that you can record and fast forward through this guy? Yeah? How many of you mute this guy on general principle? Thank you. This is what I'm talking about. Basically, we are very familiar with marketing messages, and the more sophisticated they get, and the funnier they get, and the more annoying they get, the better we get at filtering them out. So chances are that your audience is being bombarded with these messages, you know, buy iPads, go on holiday, you know, do you pay too much for your car insurance? You need to basically make sure that what you're presenting to these people is of value. It is something that they want. And you've got to work out what they want before they know they want it. Otherwise, there's going to be a bit of a lag, and you're probably going to miss the boat. Okay. So not only are we very good at filtering out stuff, but technology now is moving along at such a speed that we're no longer programmed by TV. We can watch on demand. We've got channels for 1 hour ahead, so if we're late home, we don't have to miss that crucial episode of EastEnders. So this is where kind of like content marketing comes in. It's creating content specifically to cut through the noise for your audience so they will want to hear your message and they'll stop what you're doing and do something, whatever that may be. So if you can imagine, if you are creating a documentary that you plan to put onto YouTube, you're building that community. This is kind of like core stuff, and this is basically what turned around my business. Okay, how many of you like to go out and buy things? Who likes being sold to? Absolutely nobody. This kind of like picks up on Mike's point in terms of there's room for everyone. What you want to make, people want to watch. You've got to cut your cloth accordingly. You know, if you want to make that like special personal art house film, you know, or documentary specifically for you and maybe your core group of friends, don't expect to get £1 million in order to make it, because chances are it's not going to make that money back. You'll never see that money again. And chances are because of that, nobody will give you that money. Yeah? But everyone likes buying. Everyone does like to kind of like get something. Maybe that's a mobile phone. Maybe that's a book. Maybe that's a download online. Maybe that's just not necessarily parting with money, but parting with time and reading a blog online. So, how many of you heard this phrase, content is king? I love this phrase myself. It's one of those nonsensical phrases that everyone throws out. It means something, but nobody actually knows what it means because it's too big. Content is important. Yes, it is. However, the reason content is important is because it's what we're after. Whenever we make kind of like any kind of decision, generally we're going to need content beforehand. We're going to need to learn something. We need to kind of like evaluate kind of like what we want to do in terms of maybe a buying decision. It might be kind of like how to get somewhere. It could be any question ever. But it's not just about kind of the information. When we're stopping learning things and stopping doing things, we want to be entertained. We want that kind of like light-hearted moment where your emails are pinging and the phone's ringing, the washing machine's broken and you can't open it and it's full of water. A really annoying moment in my life. And you just want something to lighten the mood. You want to be entertained. And there's also kind of like those instances where you have no idea, absolutely none at all, and you want to find out how to do something. So what do? You go online, you Google it, and usually there'll be a video there. There might be a kind of like step-by-step blog. Maybe kind of like you have a remote control for your presentation that you don't actually know how it works. So you go online and see what other people have said in terms of tips and tricks. So it needs to be something of value, and basically that value goes along those 4 categories: entertainment, guidance, information, or education. Content should never sell or preach. It should always be relevant to your audience. And that's basically where we're going with this presentation in terms of trying to find out what your audience wants. And that audience doesn't necessarily mean the audience for your project. It could be the audience in terms of your employer. It doesn't have to be a project. It can actually be your career plan.